I stood in the canto of my parents' living room, a space lively with conversations but heavy with unspoken words. The walls were adorned with family photos. Each frame seemed to announce my brother's many achievements. There he was, grinning brightly in his graduation cap, the claps of friends and family resonating like applause in my ears. My mother's gaze radiated pride. When she looked at him, it felt as though she was seeing a constellation, while I merely flickered in the backdrop, a distant star not meant to shine. "Did you hear about James's promotion?" my mother exclaimed, her voice lilting above the family chatter as if to drown out my lingering silence. The words struck me like cold water, a piercing reminder of my own perceived inadequacies. I forced a smile, feeling the familiar knot in my chest tighten. The room buzzed with admiration as stories of my brother's latest feats flowed, each recounting a new reminder of my own failures. What was I supposed to say? How could I express the chaos swirling inside me? Why can't I be more like him? I thought, grappling with my internal monologue as I fought to maintain composure. This familial love felt conditional, tethered to accolades I seemed incapable of achieving. Shadows of doubt crept in, whispering their bitter truths. You're not enough. You're invisible. What if these wounds are just shadows hiding my light? I whispered to myself, searching for solace in my thoughts, despite the energetic air around me. And there it was, amidst the noise, a flicker of clarity breaking through the fog of self-doubt. What if this wasn't the end of my story, but simply a transitional phase? Perhaps I had the power to redefine the narrative that had shackled me. As laughter erupted in waves, I watched my brother and father banter, their camaraderie vibrant and unbreakable. The warmth of their connection stung like a phantom ache, reminiscent of the countless evenings I felt distinctively alone despite being surrounded by family. Memories crashed over me. Trivial moments twisted into monumental disappointments, each shaping the belief that love was earned only through success. I'm not enough, I constantly chanted as if imposing limitations on myself. But in that moment of overwhelming emotion, I felt a fresh surge of awakening. I began to see all those words, my mother's praise, the family's admiration, as the burdens I had unwittingly accepted. They were shadows framing my perception. Did I have to measure my worth against my brother's brilliance for the rest of my life? Could I truly break free from the reverberations of that expectation? With every breath, I welcomed the sensation of hope encroaching upon despair. It began nudging me toward introspection, allowing the possibility that these shadows could become something transformative. Perhaps they held the key to my rediscovery, a chance to reconstruct my identity. As I gathered my thoughts, the atmosphere shifted. The warmth of familial laughter enveloped me, but I felt weighty and unmoored. Amid the chaos, I sensed the contours of a path emerging before me. I realized I was not just a player on the sidelines of my own life. Instead, I yearned to reclaim my story, to acknowledge the fractured pieces of my spirit and integrate them into a narrative that celebrated my existence. This journey was just beginning, and it was time to step into the light. As the chatter from the family gathering faded into a blurry background hum, my mind remained trapped in a storm of reflection, piercing through layers of my past. I felt drawn back to moments steeped in hurtful comparisons, memories that emerged vividly, as if summoned by some unrelenting force. Each memory struck a chord, unveiling the core beliefs forged in the crucible of my childhood. I vividly recall Sunday afternoons marked by familial rituals. The dining table was adorned with triumphs, my brother's accolades brightly flaunted while my achievements flickered in obscurity. "Look at James and his perfect grades," my mother would boast, her voice resonating with pride that seemed to cast me into shadow. I would smile, the taste of bitterness lingering on my tongue. This was a familiar melody, the strumming of my mother's expectations echoing in my heart, a constant reminder of my perceived shortcomings. On one particular occasion, I'd poured my soul into an essay that explored deep emotional landscapes, daring to hope for some validation. Instead, when I presented it, my mother remarked casually, That's nice, honey, but James just delivered an outstanding thesis on economic theory. My heart sank as a familiar heaviness settled in. It felt as though my passions were dismissed, leaving behind a barren landscape of self-doubt and questions. Am I not enough? I whispered into the emptiness. With the years passing, that essential phrase, "I'm not enough," became a silent mantra, carving grooves in my psyche that refused to be erased. I learned that love and acceptance were intertwined not with my existence, but with my accomplishments, as if my value was conditional upon achieving what my brother so effortlessly managed. The longing for my mother's approval cut through me like barbed wire, each unmet need echoing louder than any applause. I recall solitary moments spent immersed in my room, writing, stories that mirrored the turmoil within but rarely shared. Would anyone ever notice? Or would I remain a mere ghost in a household punctuated by others' brightness? Each fleeting moment of unfulfilled dreams culminated in crippling beliefs about my worth. Love is conditional on success, my heart whispered, a truth I had internalized and struggled to unlearn. The labyrinth of my childhood, filled with echoes of comparison and judgment, became a landscape I could navigate but never really conquer. Even my father, often overwhelmed and passive, added to the family dynamic of emotional avoidance. I would watch him withdraw, seemingly happy to let my mother's voice fill the silence while I desperately sought his affirmation. My yearning for his acknowledgement felt like an empty call. Every supportive word I craved was swallowed by an aura of unresponsiveness. We had learned that displaying our vulnerabilities was a weakness, and my emotions continuously went unacknowledged. Caught in this web of conditional acceptance, I withdrew further into myself, retreating from the world that felt impossibly demanding. The creative pursuits I once cherished now felt heavy with expectation, like bricks on my chest. What's the point? I began to ask after each failure, and each writing project that went unappreciated muted my already timid spirit. But as I navigated these haunting memories, I began to recognize another part of myself, a wounded child, with dreams, fears, and an ever-aching desire for connection. I could see her, a small girl scribbling rhymes and stories amid the chaos, carrying a heart too sensitive for the world's sharp judgments. Those innocent creations were the lifelines I clutched, all disguised wishes for love and acceptance. With every unearthed memory, I realized that the beliefs I had forged were not truly mine, but echoes of my family's ambitions and the pressure to conform to expectations. It was as though I had inherited the shadows, a narrative I now had the power to rewrite. Could I ever break free from this conditioning? I pondered, wondering if I could alter the course of my life by healing these wounds. For the first time, an inkling of hope blossomed within the darkness. Perhaps those shadows didn't define me. Instead, they could be transformed into a narrative of strength and resilience. I took a deep breath, welcoming this new awareness. If these whispers of doubt had all come from outside, surely the seeds of self-love could be cultivated from within. This was a turning point, a commitment to challenge those debilitating beliefs and reclaim my narrative. The turbulent emotions began to feel lighter as small threads of clarity emerged. I knew it was time to embark on the journey of self-discovery, to acknowledge my pain and nurture my wounded spirit. I was ready to confront the tangled threads that tied my identity to my family's expectations, ready to give my inner child the love she desperately craved. As I gathered my thoughts, I felt the contours of a transformative path unfolding before me. An awareness washed over me. I was more than just a figure in my family's story. I was ready to take ownership of my life. The journey to reclaim my identity was just beginning, but for the first time, I could see light threading through the shadows, illuminating the way to healing. It was a quiet evening when I stumbled upon Jung's Memories, Dreams, Reflections. The atmosphere in my apartment charged with a sense of anticipation. As I settled into my favorite reading nook, the familiar comfort of cushions wrapped around me, I opened the book and felt a pull toward the words that lay ahead. The moment I encountered the concept of the wounded inner child, I felt a jolt of recognition surge through me. This was not just a phrase, It was an invitation to explore the depths of my emotional landscape. Suddenly, I had the vocabulary to express the ache that had resided in my heart for years, a pain stemming from childhood wounds I had yet to confront. I could see my younger self, wide-eyed and vulnerable, often ignored amidst the expectations that loomed large in my home. Jung's insights illuminated my past, allowing me to see the dynamics at play in my family. The perpetual comparisons, the conditional love, they were all encapsulated in the experiences I had long buried. As I read more, I began to understand that I had been a passenger in my own life, navigating through a narrative crafted by others. But could acknowledging this inner child lead to healing? The thought resonated deep within me. With every page I turned, I unraveled the tangled patterns of belief that had shaped my identity. The term persona resonated deeply. It perfectly encapsulated the mask I had donned for so long to meet the expectations of my family. This facade, which I had worn to navigate my world, felt constricting, suffocating the essence of who I was meant to be. What if I embraced my true self instead of hiding behind this mask? I asked, feeling the question reverberate through my mind. With every revelation, the shadows that had clouded my perception began to lift. I was not merely the character in someone else's story, but a protagonist in my own life, ready to redefine my narrative. Jung's explorations were captivating, and through them, I saw parallels between my experiences and the archetypal journey he described, the hero's quest toward individuation. I realized it wasn't just about confronting the wounds of my past, but about seeking to understand and integrate every part of myself. The journey toward healing would encompass both the light and dark aspects of my existence. In my solitude, I began a dialogue with my inner child, recognizing the intuitive creativity that had once flowed through me. As I scribbled in my journal, I envisioned her, the young girl longing for validation, seeking connection, waiting for someone to acknowledge her existence. "You are enough," I reassured her in my writing. "You deserve love and acceptance." This inner conversation became transformative. The more I nurtured that wounded child within, the more I felt barriers break down. I started to confront my fears and choices with courage, mapping out the emotional landscape I was traversing. Each realization was like a star illuminating the night sky, providing much-needed guidance. As I ventured deeper, I embraced the idea that my family's expectations, and by extension my struggles, did not have to define my worth. I felt empowered to challenge the narratives that had been stitched into the fabric of my identity. Slowly, I began to see my past not as a source of shame, but as a foundation from which I could rise. Jung had lit the way for me, offering a map to explore the labyrinth of my psyche. I envisioned a future where I could weave my story with threads of both pain and strength, each moment contributing to the beautiful tapestry of my life. It was exhilarating to accept that healing wasn't just a destination, but a journey, cultivating self-love and embracing my wounds as integral parts of my narrative. With this new perspective, I was ready to venture into the next chapter of my life. Armed with Jung's insights, I felt a sense of urgency to integrate them into my reality. The shadows of my past still lingered, but they no longer held power over me. I stood at the threshold, ready to take ownership of my identity and create a story that celebrated who I truly was, a story filled with resilience, authenticity, and hope for the future. The journey of self-discovery awaited me, and I was more than willing to step into the unknown, knowing that every step would lead me closer to the light. Healing was not just an act of revisiting pain, it was about reclaiming my voice and becoming the author of my own life's narrative. With my heart open to the possibilities ahead, I was prepared to embrace every aspect of myself, choosing growth over fear, connection over isolation, and ultimately, love over judgment. With Jung's illuminating wisdom guiding me, I took a deep breath, ready to engage with the shadows that had long lingered in my life. This phase of my journey was not just an exploration. It was a confrontation with the unresolved aspects of my psyche. The complexity of what lay before me, internal struggles, fears, and unacknowledged desires, was palpable. Creating a sacred space for introspection in my living room, I lit candles and settled into my familiar nook, a journal at the ready. I opened the dialogue with myself, inviting every buried emotion and memory to the surface. There was an understanding that this was the time to engage with my shadow. The first revelation emerged in the form of a complex, a deeply ingrained pattern, stemming from years of familial comparison. The belief that my worth was tied to my brother's accomplishments weighed heavily on me. Through my writing, I examined how this perception had governed my identity, as I had learned to equate love and acceptance with achievement. What do I truly desire? I pondered, feeling the question reverberate within me. I discovered that my aspirations had become echoes of what others expected of me. The realization struck hard. I had lost touch with my authentic longings, hidden beneath layers of self-doubt. A vivid memory replayed itself. A summer day on the soccer field where I stood silently on the sidelines, overshadowed by my brother's triumph. The cheers felt like daggers, piercing my heart with inadequacy. Why can't I be recognized like that? I thought, as feelings of longing solidified into a belief that love was conditional on success. Tears flowed as I chronicled this memory, the emotions flooding my consciousness. I realized these feelings had dictated my life choices, silencing my own voice in favor of seeking validation. As I embraced this pain, I transformed it into a powerful affirmation. You are enough, without condition. With each word poured onto the pages, shadows of the past began to lift. I understood that my struggles didn't define me. They were merely parts of my narrative. The process of introspection allowed me to break free from the shackles of comparison, liberating myself from the notion that I had to mirror others to be worthy. Then came the critical exploration of my persona, the mask I had forged to navigate my world. This identity shielded me from vulnerability, but also distanced me from who I truly was. What if I stripped away these layers? I asked myself. What if I embraced the real me, unapologetically? Engaging this inner dialogue transformed my relationship with my emotional landscape. I began to acknowledge the repressed parts of myself, my creativity, joy, and flaws. Writing letters to my younger self became an empowering act of love and forgiveness, affirming that she had always been worthy of acceptance. You were brave for facing life's challenges, I wrote. Your voice deserves to be heard. Through this exploration, my shadow transformed from an intimidating specter into a source of insight. I learned to embrace it rather than fear it, realizing that healing isn't simply about addressing past wounds, but embracing the entirety of who I am. Confronting my shadow revealed the complexity of my identity, as I honored both light and dark. I acknowledged that I could experience joy and sorrow and still be worthy. It was okay to feel pain if it also meant I could feel joy. Each realization became a step toward liberation. My inner child, longing for recognition, emerged as a focal point for healing. The more I nurtured her, the more fragmented pieces of myself began to coalesce. I encouraged her to explore her creativity and to dream. Honoring those buried aspirations awakened a profound sense of possibility within me. As weeks passed, the burdens I once carried lifted, revealing a wellspring of hope. My struggles transformed into stepping stones toward self-discovery. With each journal entry, I embraced my complexity, celebrating both light and shadow. The shadows of my past still lingered, but they no longer defined my present. Instead, they enriched my narrative, adding depth to my understanding of resilience. I began to see my journey as an intricate tapestry, a blend of experiences woven together to create a unique story of strength. Emerging from this inner dive, I felt renewed purpose. The external pressures that had once loomed large faded, replaced by a sense of self-acceptance. I was reclaiming my voice, both literally and metaphorically, becoming the author of my life's narrative. As I stood on the cusp of this new chapter, I felt a burning desire to weave a story that honored my journey and reflected the beauty of the human experience. I knew that healing would not just be about my own growth, but also about sharing that growth as a guide for others who struggled with similar shadows. This process was not merely an act of confrontation. It symbolized a journey toward becoming whole. Every hidden aspect of myself, every complex, was shedding its guise. I was stepping into my true light. With each realization an act of self-compassion, I was learning to trust my instincts and embrace authenticity. And as I navigated this complicated emotional landscape, I understood that my journey had just begun. The light of self-discovery beckoned me forward, urging me to step into a future filled with possibility. I was ready to embrace the fullness of my story, embracing my past, cherishing my present, and inviting the future with open arms. Each chapter unfolding would be a testament to resilience, growth, and the beauty of the human heart. With the wounds of my past freshly acknowledged and nurtured, I felt ready to step into a new chapter of my life. The long-awaited turning point had arrived, and with it, the promise of change. I realized I no longer needed to conform to the expectations imposed by my family. It was time for me to embrace my individuality fully and honor my unique path. I made a conscious decision. I would no longer seek external validation. This thought resonated deeply within me, energizing my spirit. It was time to turn my gaze inward and rediscover what I truly desired. What did success look like for me? What passions had I neglected in the pursuit of others' approval? One chilly autumn morning, I ventured to a nearby cafe, determined to reflect on my aspirations. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee enveloped me as I settled into a cozy corner by the window. This place, filled with the gentle hum of conversation and the sound of clinking mugs, provided the perfect ambiance for my thoughts. As I sipped my drink, I began to craft a list of my hopes and dreams, purely aligned with my authenticity, not shaped by familial expectations. My hands moved quickly across the page as the words flowed. I wanted to write again, truly and authentically. I envisioned narratives that embraced the complexities of human experience, weaving stories that reflected my journey and celebrated the beauty of our imperfections. The realization struck me. You have the power to define your journey, I wrote. Each line filled me with energy, as if I were rediscovering a lost part of myself. But how could I share this newfound self with my family? The thought of confronting them about my decision to step away from their shadows was daunting. What would they think? Would they understand? The fear of judgment clawed at my insides, yet I recognized that this was a necessary leap toward authentic living. I needed to initiate a dialogue about my individuality and passions, expressing clearly that I was choosing to walk my own path. A few days later, I gathered my family for dinner, the familiar warmth surrounding us. I felt the weight of anticipation in the air, knowing this conversation would be pivotal. After the main course, I cleared my throat, nervous yet determined. There's something I'd like to share, I began, feeling the love and curiosity radiate from them. I opened up about my journey of self-discovery, how introspection had led me to understand the pressures of familial expectations and how these pressures had shaped my identity. The turning point for me was my decision to redefine success on my own terms. I want to focus on writing again, but not for accolades or comparisons, rather to express my truth and celebrate our shared humanity. Their reactions were mixed. I noticed my mother's brow furrow with concern, while my father nodded slowly, supportive but cautious. My brother looked intrigued. "What kind of stories?" he asked, displaying genuine curiosity. "I want to explore the intricacies of healing, resilience, and the beauty found in imperfection. Stories that resonate with the heart," I replied, feeling my excitement rising. As I articulated my dreams, I felt a sense of liberation that came from stepping into my truth. While my mother initially struggled with this shift, she responded after a moment of silence. "I want the best, for you, but I never realized how trapped you felt. I'm here to support you." Hearing her acknowledgement eased my tension. I breathed a sigh of relief. It felt like a small victory, a moment of connection instead of confrontation. I explained that I hoped we could support each other's journeys even if they looked different from what we had envisioned as a family. This opened space for honest discourse, allowing us to embrace our individual paths. While some discomfort lingered, the dialogue felt like a step toward mutual understanding and acceptance. As I left the dinner that night, I felt lighter, empowered by my decision to align with my true self. My choice to share my authentic desires with my family created an opportunity for deeper relationships, allowing us to navigate our differences while remaining connected. In the days following our dinner, I was filled with renewed purpose. I dove into writing, pouring my heart into stories that reflected my experiences and the lessons I had learned along the way. I sought out workshops and joined a community of writers who valued authenticity and vulnerability. I found inspiration in the stories of others and saw a shared path of growth fine-tuned through the lens of personal experience. With each piece I crafted, I began to celebrate the beauty of imperfections and the strength found in our shared vulnerability. The stories I wrote took shape around healing, resilience, and the rich tapestry of the human experience. In doing so, it felt as if I were reclaiming not just my narrative but a sense of belonging, not just within my family but within the broader spectrum of humanity. I recognized that my journey had opened doors for connection. As I shared my experiences, I found an audience eager to engage with the complexities of life, drawn to the tales of growth that resonated within them. By being vulnerable, I began offering solace to those who had faced similar shadows. Through my words, I aimed to illuminate paths for others and remind them they were not alone. The turning point I sought was more than just a personal milestone. It emerged as an act of service to humanity. My commitment to authenticity became a beacon for those navigating their struggles, an invitation to embrace their uniqueness in a world that often encourages conformity. As I stepped into this new era, it became clear that every moment of healing and growth was not limited to my individual story. It was part of a collective narrative that we all shared. My dedication to authenticity demanded continual introspection, a willingness to grow and learn while remaining open to connection and support. My path forward was not set in stone, but with every story I told and every shared conversation, I felt empowered to write my own ending. I committed to remaining true to myself while encouraging others to do the same. From that point on, I resolved to embrace authenticity as both a guiding principle and a lifelong practice. With every story I penned and conversation I nurtured, I was not just asserting my narrative but creating space for others to thrive. I was step by step becoming the author of my life, a life filled with love, resilience, creativity, and a promise to always embrace the fullness of my story, whatever it may hold. As I embraced my journey of authenticity, I realized that this was not just a one-off decision but a commitment, a practice of integrating my new insights into daily life. The transformation I had undergone demanded actionable steps to sustain and nurture this evolving self. To begin, I revamped my writing process. Writing had always been my refuge, but now I sought to deepen the connection with my craft. I carved out sacred time each morning, dedicating those early hours to explore my thoughts and emotions. My workspace became a cozy nook filled with soft light, inspiring quotes, and cherished mementos. In this inviting atmosphere, I allowed my creativity to flourish without fear of judgment. As I wrote, I focused on revisiting the themes of healing, resilience, and vulnerability that resonated with my heart. I penned stories that drew upon my own experiences, tales that reflected the beauty of imperfections and the shared human experience. With every word, I began to reclaim my narrative, allowing my voice to resonate through my writing. But it didn't stop there. Recognizing the power of community, I sought to connect with others who shared my passion for storytelling. I joined local writing groups, where I could share my work and receive feedback. Each reading felt like a leap of faith, but the support I experienced from fellow writers was exhilarating. They connected with my struggles and triumphs, reminding me that vulnerability fosters deeper connections. Beyond my writing, leading workshops became a priority. I volunteered to guide sessions focused on storytelling and the strength found in vulnerability. Creating safe spaces for participants to share their personal narratives was rewarding. I witnessed the transformative power of storytelling, how sharing our truths could illuminate paths for others. Each workshop grew into a gathering of stories, where participants opened up, revealing their own fears and triumphs. However, this journey was not without obstacles. Self-doubt occasionally crept in, whispering old insecurities. Would my writing resonate? Would my family understand my commitment to this new path? During those difficult moments, journaling became my most valuable partner. I poured my fears onto the pages, confronting them with honesty and compassion. "You are worthy," I would write, reaffirming my value in a world that often tries to dictate worth through metrics of success. Confronting my shadow showed me the importance of establishing healthy boundaries with my family, allowing me to focus on my needs and aspirations without guilt. While supportive conversations took place, I learned to navigate them with love and grace, reminding my family that embracing my individuality did not diminish my love and respect for them. As I continued my transformative actions, my sense of purpose solidified. I realized that my commitment to authenticity was multifaceted. I no longer sought validation from others. Instead, I focused on nurturing connections through the stories I shared. My writing became a tool to uplift others, offering solace to those who felt lost amid their struggles. I also took the initiative to advocate for mental health awareness within my community. Collaborating with local organizations, I initiated projects aimed at inspiring conversations about vulnerability and mental well-being. By sharing my journey, I hope to normalize discussions around emotional health and create spaces where people felt seen and heard. Each action I took further reinforced my belief that while healing is personal, it is also collective. The narratives we tell ourselves and each other can build bridges of understanding and compassion. I found empowerment in my conversations with others, where vulnerability became a shared strength rather than a point of weakness. As I delved deeper into this exploration, I recognized a palpable shift in my relationships. The friends I made in my writing circles became sources of inspiration and encouragement. We celebrated each other's wins and supported one another through disappointments, creating a network that fueled our individual and collective growth. Each shared story was a testament to resilience, an acknowledgement that we are all intricately woven into a larger fabric of experience. I felt increasingly connected to those embracing their narratives, and my heart expanded with the realization that we are not alone in our struggles. In this practice of freedom, I learned that the act of writing was not a solitary pursuit, but a community endeavor, a path that leads us to open-heartedness and unity. With every story shared, every event I organized, I felt more empowered to encourage others to use their narratives as a means to heal and connect. As I continued to nurture my journey, the lessons I learned became integral to my daily life. Honoring my authenticity involved challenging societal expectations and remaining true to my values. I committed to using my voice to uplift those around me, sharing not only my triumphs but also my vulnerabilities. This process of transformation illuminated the understanding that authenticity requires ongoing effort and self-compassion. It was a continual act of courage, reminding myself that it's okay to feel uncertain and that every emotion carries a lesson. Now, writing embraced the fullness of my experiences, the highs and lows, as I shared my story with clarity and authenticity. It became a refuge, a vessel for my truth, and a way to connect with others. In doing so, I was not only freeing myself, but also igniting the spark of freedom in others. With each step I took along this path, I was redefining what it meant to live freely. Embracing my life's narrative became a promise to myself, to cherish every moment, to honor my journey, and to foster connections that uplift and inspire. I was ready to embrace the unfolding of my story, filled with love, resilience, and the collective strength of our shared humanity. Through this practice of freedom, I discovered the transformative power of authenticity, and I was eager to continue my journey, knowing that I could write my own ending, a vibrant tapestry of experience marking the way forward. As I embraced my journey of authenticity, I felt a profound transformation within myself. No longer bound by the expectations of others, I began to define who I was on my own terms. I had become a storyteller, one who celebrated healing, vulnerability, and the strength of the human experience, seeking to inspire others on their journeys. Writing became the essence of my existence, a refuge where I could channel my thoughts and emotions. Every story flowed from my heart, a testament to not only my struggles but also my triumphs. Each word crafted a narrative that reflected my journey of resilience and growth, allowing me to reclaim my life story. My commitment to authenticity turned into action as I engaged with my community through workshops and writing groups. These gatherings allowed me to create spaces where individuals felt safe to share their stories, fostering an environment of mutual understanding and support. I witnessed the power of vulnerability as participants opened up about their own struggles, and in that exchange, connections deepened, revealing the beauty of our shared humanity. However, challenges persisted. Self-doubt sometimes crept in, stirring old insecurities. During such moments, I turned to my journal, pouring out my feelings and reminding myself of the journey I had undertaken. "You are worthy, and your voice matters," I would write, affirmations reinforcing my commitment to authenticity and allowing me to confront those voices of uncertainty. With the support of friends and the writing community around me, I found strength in vulnerability. Each shared experience reinforced the understanding that we are not alone in our struggles. This shared journey became a powerful source of healing, not just for me but for those I connected with. Through my workshops, I initiated the Voices Unbound project, encouraging participants to embrace their narratives. The events blossomed into intimate gatherings filled with honest conversations. Hearing the participants share their truths reminded me of my own growth and the resilience found in vulnerability. As my outreach grew, I extended my mission to advocate for mental health awareness in my community. Collaborating with local organizations, I hope to create an environment where open conversations about healing were welcomed. I shared my stories, emphasizing that healing is a collective journey, an opportunity for connection and support. In the months that followed, I observed a remarkable shift, not only in myself, but also amongst my friends and family. They began to engage more openly about their own experiences, creating a dialogue rooted in love and acceptance. I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the understanding that blossomed in our relationships. With writing and community engagement at the forefront of my journey, I decided to compile my stories into a collection. Each piece would reflect my evolution and serve as an invitation for others to embark on their paths of self-discovery. I envisioned a book that highlighted the beauty found in healing and connection, capturing the lessons from my past and the insights gained along the way. As I prepared for this endeavor, I felt a renewed excitement. This was more than just a book. It was an embodiment of my journey, a legacy of healing that would transcend my individual experience. By sharing my stories, I hope to illuminate the paths of others who might feel lost or alone, encouraging them to embrace their narratives. As I stood at the threshold of this new chapter, filled with anticipation for the future, I embraced the profound legacy I was building, not just for myself, but for everyone who wandered through my words. I was ready to weave together the threads of my story, a vibrant tapestry filled with love, resilience, and shared humanity. Together, we could foster a culture of understanding, reminding ourselves and each other that within every wound lies the potential for beauty, growth, and transformation. In my commitment to authenticity and connection, I understood this was merely the beginning of a lifelong journey. I took a deep breath, ready to embrace the adventure ahead, knowing the stories waiting to be told would inspire and heal far beyond my own experience. I was determined to honor my journey and give voice to those yearning for self-discovery. Each chapter ahead was filled with promise, a new dawn on the horizon that illuminated the path forward.